Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the podcast where we really get into complex topics, look at the sources, and try to break them down so they're clear and you can actually use the information.
That's the goal.
And today, we're diving into something almost everyone has experienced at some point: exam anxiety.
Oh, yeah. A big one.
You know, if you've ever had that awful feeling in your stomach, or maybe your mind just completely blanks out during a test, even though you knew the material, well, this deep dive is definitely for you.
hmm
Our mission today isn't just to say, oh, just relax. That doesn't work, right? We want to dig into the psychology, the social pressures, the practical stuff, basically understand why it happened so we can maybe get a handle on it.
Exactly. Understand the how and why to tackle the what.
We've pulled together quite a bit of research, psychological theories, clinical techniques, you name it, and there's this one line from our source material that just jumped out immediately. Examinations test knowledge, but anxiety often tests courage.
That hits it right on the head, doesn't it?
It really does, because exams are supposed to be objective, right? Tools to measure what you know. But somewhere along the line, especially in really competitive systems, they've turned into these huge sources of fear, of uh, emotional chaos.
Yeah, the stakes feel incredibly high.
And exam anxiety isn't just some minor inconvenience. The research shows it's one of the biggest academic and emotional hurdles for teens and young adults today. It messes with performance, obviously, but also long-term mental health. Okay, let's unpack this.
Right. So to start unpacking, we need a solid definition. Like you said, it's not just feeling a bit nervous. Clinically, exam anxiety is it's this intense mix.
Yeah.
You've got a profound fear of failing,
Yeah, okay.
constant worry, this feeling of dread.
That sounds heavy already.
It is. And then there's the physical part. Physiological over-arousal. That's your body freaking out, the fast heart rate, the muscle tension, all those physical symptoms people feel.
The sweaty palms, the stomach knots.
Exactly. That's the emotionality component we'll get into.
Yeah.
Now, the really cruel part, the paradox, is how it messes with your brain. High anxiety directly interferes with concentration, with pulling information out of your memory, and with, actually solving problems on the test.
Well, so the very thing you need to do well is blocked by the anxiety itself.
Precisely. You have students who study like crazy, they know the stuff, but they underperform because they just can't stay calm enough to access that knowledge. The fear response literally slams the door on recall.
That feeling of your mind going blank when you know you studied it, that's got to be incredibly frustrating.
Utterly.
Okay, for listeners who want to get a bit deeper into the mechanics, the why behind this reaction, our sources point to some key psychological theories. How do researchers explain this sort of mind-body hijack?
Yeah, it's fascinating how they've broken it down. A really important one is Charles Spielberger's work. He identified two components of test anxiety, and understanding the difference is key because the strategies to manage it target each one differently.
Okay, two components. What are they?
So the first is worry. This is the cognitive side, the mental stuff. It's all that negative self-talk, I'm going to fail, this is a disaster, everyone else is doing better. It's also the catastrophic thinking, imagining the worst possible outcomes.
The internal monologue of doom.
Pretty much.
Hmm.
And what worry does is it hogs your mental bandwidth, your working memory. So instead of using your brain power to figure out that physics problem, you're using it to freak out about the consequences of not figuring out the physics problem.
Yeah, it's like an internal saboteur taking up valuable processing power.
Exactly. And the second component is emotionality. This is the physical reaction we talked about, the fast heartbeat, the sweating, the tense muscles, the upset stomach. So while worry is messing with your thoughts, emotionality is messing with your body, making it almost impossible to sit still and focus.
Okay. So you need to tackle both the runaway thoughts and the physical panic.
You got it. Managing anxiety means addressing both the mind and the body.
Now, the sources also mentioned perception, that how a student sees the test is maybe more important than the test itself.
Yes, that brings us into what's called appraisal theory from Lazarus and Folkman. Their idea is that stress doesn't actually come from the event, the exam. It comes from how the student appraises or perceives that event.
How they frame it in their mind.
Exactly. If you see the exam as this huge, overwhelming threat to your future, your self-worth, maybe even your relationships, your anxiety is going to go through the roof.
But if you see it differently,
If you can reframe it, appraise it as a challenge, maybe an opportunity to show what you've learned, the stress levels are much lower. Sometimes that stress can even be helpful. They call it eustress or positive stress. So a huge part of managing anxiety is shifting that appraisal from threat to challenge.
That makes sense. And that framing must feed directly into how confident the student feels, right? If I think I can handle the challenge, I'm less likely to panic.
Absolutely. And that ties perfectly into Bandura's self-efficacy theory. Self-efficacy is basically your belief in your own ability to succeed in specific situations or accomplish a task.
Like passing an exam?
Precisely. The sources are really clear on this. Low self-efficacy, that deep down feeling of, I just can't handle pressure, I always mess up tests, is a massive predictor of high test anxiety. If you don't believe you can cope, your body's alarm system goes off.
So how do you build that belief, that self-efficacy? Is it just telling yourself, I can do it?
Well, positive self-talk helps, but Bandura found it's not the most powerful way. The most effective way to build self-efficacy is through what he called mastery experiences,
Meaning?
meaning successfully doing the thing you're afraid of, or something similar, successfully navigating a challenge. That's why things like practicing mock exams under timed conditions are so incredibly important. They give your brain concrete evidence.
Yep.
See, I faced this pressure before and I got through it. I can do it again.
So practice isn't just about learning the material, it's about learning you can handle the situation.
Exactly. It builds proof. And we know that targeted strategies based on these ideas actually work. You mentioned data earlier.
Yeah, the American Psychological Association finding from 2021.
Right. That study showed students trained in specific techniques, relaxation and cognitive restructuring, had a significant drop, about 30%, in their test anxiety levels.
Wow, 30% is huge.
It really is. And those techniques directly target the worry and emotionality components. Cognitive restructuring helps you challenge those threat appraisals, swap catastrophic thoughts for realistic ones. Basically, it helps your thinking brain take back control from your panic brain. It shows anxiety is manageable with the right skills.
Okay, so if anxiety is fueled by these negative perceptions, these doubts about our ability, the big question is, where does all that come from? Why do these fears take root?
Yeah, that leads us into the root causes, and it's usually not just one thing. It's complicated.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because looking through the source material, exam anxiety is like this complex knot. It's tied up with our inner thoughts, pressures from outside, even the school system itself. Let's start inside, with the psychological causes. What's going on in the student's head?
Internally, the big drivers are that fear of failure we talked about and deep-seated self-doubt. Low self-efficacy is huge here. If you've messed up on tests before, those memories get triggered under pressure, and you start thinking, well, I failed last time, so I'm bound to fail again. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy almost.
A vicious cycle.
Totally. And then you have perfectionism playing a role. Some students set these impossibly high standards for themselves, like they have to get every question right, recall everything perfectly. Since perfection is, well, impossible, they're basically setting themselves up for stress. Any kind of mistake feels like total failure, and boom, anxiety spikes.
And our minds are pretty good at making things worse with distorted thinking, right? What kind of irrational thoughts pop up?
Oh, absolutely. Cognitive distortions are major fuel for the worry component. The main one is often catastrophic thinking, taking one potential negative outcome and blowing it way out of proportion. The classic is, if I fail this one exam, I won't get into college, my parents will be disappointed, my entire future is ruined.
Which is almost never actually true, but feels incredibly real in the moment.
Exactly. Other common ones are all or nothing, thinking seeing everything as either a total success or a complete disaster, no middle ground, and mind reading, assuming you know that others, parents, friends, teachers, are judging you negatively, even with no evidence. These thought patterns just feed the anxiety loop.
Okay, so that's the internal landscape. But students aren't living in a vacuum. Let's talk about the external pressures, the parental and social causes, the pressure cooker environment.
Yeah, this is a massive piece of the puzzle. Often, it starts with well-meaning but excessive parental expectations. There's a huge focus on grades, on marks, sometimes relentless comparison with siblings or classmates. It creates this feeling that your worth is tied directly to your score and that you always have to be better than someone else, not just doing your best.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. And it's reinforced by a broader societal issue, where we often glorify academic achievement, specifically high marks over genuine learning, curiosity, or developing skills. The unspoken message becomes, your grade is your value.
Which makes the fear of failure about so much more than just the grade itself. It feels like you might lose approval or respect.
Precisely. If a student feels like they lack unconditional emotional support at home or can't talk openly about the pressure, they internalize it all. Then it becomes this crushing fear of disappointing people, parents, teachers, friends. That fear can be way heavier than worrying about the actual subject matter. They're juggling the test and the potential social fallout.
Okay, now let's zoom out a bit further. What about the system itself, the institutional causes? How does the way schools operate sometimes add to the stress?
This is crucial. Many education systems, especially in highly competitive places, are just fundamentally built around exams.
Yeah.
Everything, how teachers teach, the homework, the feedback, it all points towards maximizing performance on that one final test. That automatically raises the stakes for that single event.
So the whole system amplifies the importance of the exam.
Right. And often, there's a lack of institutional support for dealing with the pressure. Schools might be great at delivering content, but not so great at teaching students how to manage stress, effective study habits that reduce anxiety, or specific exam-taking strategies. They teach the what, but not the how to cope.
Does inconsistency play a role too? Like changing the rules of the game?
Absolutely. Unpredictability breeds anxiety. If exam patterns suddenly change without warning or enough time to practice the new format, or if grading criteria are unclear or feedback is inconsistent, students feel lost. They lose that sense of control, thinking, what's the point of preparing if they just change everything anyway? That uncertainty completely undermines the confidence that hard work will pay off.
Okay, and finally, there are the basics, the biological and environmental causes, the lifestyle stuff that impacts our ability to handle stress.
Yeah, we often overlook how fundamental this is. Sleep deprivation is probably the biggest enemy here. Regularly getting less than the crucial 7-8 hours just wrecks your cognitive function, your emotional regulation.
Mm.
Basically, your brain's ability to manage stress hormones like cortisol goes way down. If you're running on fumes, you're biologically primed for anxiety.
Makes sense. Your baseline is already stressed.
Exactly. Then there's stimulant use, relying heavily on caffeine, sugary energy drinks, even some supplements. It feels like it helps you stay awake, but it actually jacks up your physiological arousal, heart rate, jitters, tension. You're artificially boosting the emotionality side of anxiety, making it much easier to tip over into full-blown panic because your body already feels like it's in an emergency.
So trying to cram all night fueled by coffee is basically the worst combination.
Pretty much the perfect storm for anxiety. Add in poor nutrition, maybe not getting any physical activity or breaks because you feel you have to study constantly. You're showing up to the exam, biologically depleted and already buzzing with stress. You're starting way behind the curve.
Okay, we've really mapped out the complex web of causes. Now, let's pivot to recognizing the problem. How does this anxiety actually show up? What are the signs students, parents, or teachers should look out for?
Recognizing the signs early is so important for getting help. We can group them into physical, emotional, cognitive, and behavioral symptoms.
Let's start with the physical. What does the body do under this kind of stress?
The physical manifestations are often the most obvious signs that the body's fight-or-flight system is activated. It's the body screaming, "I'm scared!" You see the classics. Persistent headaches, sweating more than usual, especially palms or forehead. Stomach problems are really common. Nausea, diarrhea, just general upset, dizziness, a racing or pounding heart.
Trembling hands.
Yep, trembling hands, muscle tension all over, sometimes trouble sleeping, either falling asleep or waking up super early and not being able to get back to sleep. And often, a noticeable loss of appetite in the days leading up to the exam.
Wow. Those aren't just minor discomforts. They actively interfere with your ability to focus and feel okay. What about the mental and emotional side?
The emotional and cognitive signs are where you see the internal chaos. Emotionally, students might become really irritable, short-tempered, or just generally nervous and on edge. Sometimes it escalates to crying spells or big mood swings.
And cognitively, you mentioned the blank mind.
Yes, that dreaded blank mind is the absolute hallmark cognitively. It feels like everything you studied just vanished. But it's usually not actual memory loss. It's a retrieval failure. The stress hormones are blocking access to the memories.
Okay.
Students also report a flood of negative self-talk, that worry component hitting its peak. They find it really hard to concentrate, sometimes even struggling to read or understand the questions properly because their attention keeps getting pulled back to the fear inside.
So physically miserable and mentally blocked. How does this anxiety change how students act? What are the behavioral symptoms?
Behaviorally, it often swings one of two ways, either avoidance or kind of hypervigilant.
Avoidance, like putting off studying.
Exactly. Procrastination is huge. Putting off studying until the very last minute because just thinking about the material triggers anxiety. Or completely avoiding any conversations about the exam with friends or family.
And the hypervigilance.
That looks like excessive checking and rechecking of notes or answers. It stems from that deep self-doubt, this constant fear they've missed something vital. You also see a real overdependence on others for reassurance. Constantly asking friends, what did you study for this part? Do you think I've done enough? They're looking outside for validation because that low self-efficacy means they can't trust their own preparation.
This sounds incredibly widespread. The sources mentioned some statistics that really highlight the scale of the problem, didn't they?
They did, and the numbers are honestly shocking. Data from Nimhans in India back in 2022 suggested that something like 68% of students there experience exam-related stress, ranging from mild to severe every year.
68%. That's more than two-thirds. That's not a small group having a tough time. That's
Yeah.
that's basically the norm.
It forces you to think, doesn't it? This isn't just individual students struggling. It points to a potential systemic issue in how we approach assessment and student well-being. It's practically a public health issue hidden within the education system.
So the immediate impact might be a lower grade than expected. But if this kind of chronic stress isn't addressed, what are the long-term effects?
Well, the short-term stuff is bad enough, not being able to recall things, poor time management during the test, maybe panic attacks, and getting marks that don't reflect your actual knowledge. But yeah, the long-term consequences can be much more damaging.
How so?
If anxiety goes unmanaged year after year, it can really erode a person's confidence and sense of self-worth. If you consistently underperform under pressure, you might start to believe you're just not capable, period. This can sadly lead to developing generalized anxiety disorder or maybe social anxiety.
So it spills over into other areas of life.
Definitely. People might start avoiding any situation they perceive as high stakes or competitive promotions at work, public speaking, even just trying new challenging things because they're terrified of feeling that panic again. And in really severe cases, the body just can't take the constant stress activation. You can see the development of psychosomatic illnesses, chronic fatigue, persistent migraines, severe insomnia that doesn't go away. The body literally keeps the score.
That really underscores why finding solutions isn't just about getting better grades. It's critical for overall health and, frankly, future happiness. Which brings us to the toolkit, the practical, evidence-based strategies from the sources to fight back against this. We've got a pretty detailed 5-part action plan here. Let's start with the internal work, cognitive and emotional management. This is about shifting that mindset, changing how we appraise the situation.
Right. An absolute first step here is self-awareness. You have to notice and name the feeling. Don't try to push it away or pretend it's not there. That usually makes it stronger. Just acknowledge it without judgment. Okay, I'm feeling anxious right now.
Yeah.
That simple act creates a bit of mental space, gives you a foothold.
Okay, so notice it, name it. Then what? How do we challenge that negative self-talk, the worry part?
That's where cognitive restructuring techniques come in, often drawn from cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT. You actively identify those catastrophic thoughts like, I'm going to fail this test and my life is over, and you challenge them. Ask yourself, is this thought realistic? What's the actual evidence?
And replace it with something more balanced.
Exactly. Replace it with a realistic, evidence-based counterthought. Something like, okay, I've studied for 15 hours for this. I know chapters 2 and 4 really well. I can control my effort during the test, and I'll do the best I can with the time I have. The goal isn't fake positivity. It's realistic self-assurance. Focus on what you can control your effort, your approach.
And we mentioned building self-efficacy earlier. Positive visualization fits here too, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely. It's like mental rehearsal for success. But it's more than just vaguely hoping for a good grade. You need to make it detailed. Use your senses. Imagine walking into the exam room feeling calm, finding your seat, taking a deep breath. Picture yourself reading the instructions clearly, recalling the information you need, writing confidently.
So you're pre-programming a calm response.
Precisely. By rehearsing it mentally, you make the actual event feel less unfamiliar and threatening. Your brain has already experienced a calm execution. And the last piece of this cognitive pillar is focus control. Maybe keep a calm diary, jot down what triggers your anxiety, specific topic, talking to a certain friend, and what coping strategies actually helped. And keep consciously shifting your focus from the outcome, the grade, to the process, your effort, your preparation plan.
Focus on the controllables. Now let's get physical. Pillar 2, relaxation and breathing techniques. How do we calm down that physiological arousal, the emotionality? What actually works?
The most powerful and instantly accessible tool is deep, controlled breathing. Specifically, the sources mention the 4-second cycle. It's simple. Inhale slowly through your nose for a count of 4, hold your breath gently for 4, and then exhale slowly through your mouth for a count of 4. Repeat.
Okay. Inhale 4, hold 4, exhale 4. Why that specific rhythm? What's it doing?
That slow, deliberate pace, especially the slightly longer exhale, directly stimulates the vagus nerve. That nerve is like the main communication line for your parasympathetic nervous system, the body's rest and digest system. So by controlling your breath like that, you're sending a direct signal to your brain saying, it's okay, the emergency is over, you can calm down. It helps lower your heart rate, reduce blood pressure, and counteract that adrenaline surge.
And you should practice this regularly, not just wait for panic.
Absolutely. Practicing it for even 5 minutes a day builds resilience in your nervous system. Another really good one is progressive muscle relaxation, or PMR.
How does that work?
You systematically tense, then release different muscle groups in your body. You might start with your toes, curl them tight for 5 seconds, then consciously release all the tension, then move up to your calves, thighs, fists, arms, shoulders, even your face. Tense, hold, release.
Yeah.
It makes you aware of where you're holding physical tension you might not even notice, and then lets you consciously let it go.
Bringing awareness to the tension to release it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like you said, consistency is key. Doing mindfulness meditation for 10 minutes daily helps you get better at observing thoughts without getting swept away. Even small things help, listening to calming instrumental music while studying, taking short stretch breaks. It's about preventing the body from adding its own layer of stress onto the mental pressure.
Okay, that covers mind and body. Pillar 3 is all about preparation strategies. We know low self-efficacy is a root cause, so good planning must be the antidote.
Planning is protection. It's that simple. The absolute #1 preventative strategy is start early. Avoid the last-minute cramming that inevitably triggers panic. Break the huge syllabus down into small, manageable daily or weekly goals. Ticking those off gives you that sense of progress, those mastery experiences that build genuine confidence day by day.
So breaking it down makes it feel less overwhelming and builds momentum. What about practicing for the test itself?
That's where simulated pressure comes in. You have to practice mock tests under realistic conditions. Set a timer, find a quiet space, no phone, no notes, unless allowed. This does two critical things. First, it makes the actual exam environment feel less scary and unknown. Second, it trains your brain to actually think and recall under time pressure. This makes that blank mind phenomena much less likely on the real day because your brain has practiced performing under stress.
Like a dress rehearsal for your brain.
Exactly. And finally, be efficient. Look at past exam papers. Are there patterns? Types of questions that always come up. Also, spend time summarizing your notes into concise review sheets. Trying to reread entire textbooks the night before is a recipe for panic. Having focused summaries reinforces that you do grasp the key concepts.
Makes sense. Targeted review, not frantic rereading. Okay, Pillar 4 covers the essentials we often neglect under stress. Healthy lifestyle choices. The foundation.
Yeah, these are non-negotiables, even though they're often the first things to go. Sleep is paramount. Aim for that consistent 7-8 hours. Keep a regular sleep schedule as much as possible. And the screen time rule is crucial. No phones, tablets, laptops for at least an hour before bed. That blue light messes with melatonin, the sleep hormone.
So protect your sleep. What about food and drink?
Eat balanced meals.
Yeah.
Fuel your brain with complex carbs, protein. Stay hydrated. Dehydration makes fatigue and brain fog worse. And please, be cautious with stimulants. A little coffee might be okay for some, but relying on multiple cups or high-caffeine energy drinks just amps up your baseline anxiety, making panic attacks more likely during the exam.
Right, it adds fuel to the fire. And what about just getting away from the books?
Absolutely vital. Short breaks for physical activity, even just a 15-minute walk outside, can do wonders. It reduces muscle tension, clears your head, lowers stress hormones. It breaks that cycle of just sitting, staring, and stressing, which leads to burnout.
Okay, that leads us to the final pillar, which involves everyone else. Family and school interventions. Building that supportive environment because the student shouldn't carry this alone.
No, they absolutely shouldn't. And this requires some conscious shifts from parents and teachers. For parents, the sources highlight something really specific. Point 21 in one of them.
Yeah.
Focus on effort-based praise, not result-based praise.
What's the difference there?
Result-based praise is, wow, you got an A, you're so smart. It sounds good, but it links the child's sense of worth, being smart, directly to the grade. So they fear losing that positive label if they score lower next time. Effort-based praise is, I saw how hard you worked on that project, you really stuck with the difficult parts. This praises the process, the dedication, the resilience, things the student can control. It builds their internal sense of competence, regardless of the final mark, and reduces the fear of judgment.
Praising the work, not just the outcome. That's a subtle but powerful shift. What about schools and teachers? What's their role?
Schools need to take that 68% statistic seriously. Teachers can start by normalizing exam stress, talking openly about it in class so students feel less alone. Running realistic mock exam sessions combined with counseling on how to handle the pressure is key. And ensuring access to professional counseling for students showing severe anxiety is essential for early intervention.
And specific actions teachers can take in their teaching.
Yes, the sources list 5 key things. 1. Conduct those mock exams under realistic timed conditions. That's desensitization. 2. Provide constructive feedback focused on how to improve, not just pointing out errors. 3. Critically, avoid making negative comparisons between students in class. 4. Be trained to spot the early physical signs of panic, the shaking, the staring, and know how to intervene gently, maybe with a quiet reminder to breathe. And 5, just generally fostering a supportive, less fear-driven classroom environment.
That's a really comprehensive set of strategies. It really moves from just understanding the problem to concrete actions. Now let's pull out some specific tools from the sources that listeners can maybe start using right away.
Okay, let's get practical. First up is the confidence plan steps. This basically walks you through that cognitive restructuring process we talked about.
How does it work?
It's a 4-step self-reflection. Step 1, write down your top 3 specific fears about exams. Not just failing, but what about failing? Forgetting formulas, running out of time, not understanding the essay question.
It's specific. Okay.
Step 2, for each fear, challenge it. Is it realistic? Is it exaggerated? Then write down a positive, realistic affirmation to counter it. So if the fear is, I'll blank on the essay, the affirmation might be, I've practiced outlining essays on key topics, and I have a strategy for choosing the best approach.
Turning the fear into a plan. I like that.
Exactly. Step 3, identify which subjects or topics cause the most anxiety and pinpoint the specific weak areas within them. No more vague, I hate chemistry. More like, I struggle with balancing chemical equations. Step 4, make a concrete study plan to tackle those specific areas. And this is key, track your progress. Notice how your anxiety about chemistry decreases as you master balancing equations. Keep a log. It provides proof your effort is working.
Creating your own evidence of competence. That leads nicely to the next tool, the self-assessment worksheet. How does that help?
This gives you an objective way to measure your anxiety level. It uses a simple rating scale, usually 1, never to 5, always, on questions about your typical exam experiences. Things like, do I feel calm before tests? Do I prepare systematically? Do I sleep well the night before? Do I panic if I get stuck? Do I compare myself constantly to others?
So you rate yourself on these behaviors. Then what?
You add up your score. The sources suggest a rough guide. Maybe 5-10 points means high anxiety. You likely need significant support and intervention. 11-18 might be moderate anxiety, suggesting focus on planning, relaxation techniques, and building confidence. 19-25 could indicate low anxiety, meaning your current strategies are working well, just keep them up. It takes the vague feeling of I'm stressed and turns it into a number you can actually track and try to improve over time.
Quantifying it makes it feel more manageable. Okay, and the final tool is for the day itself, the exam day control plan. What's the checklist for staying stable under pressure?
This is all about controlling the controllables on the day. First, control your arrival. Get to the exam venue 15-20 minutes early. No rushing, no last-minute panic about finding the room. That buffer is crucial.
Reduces that initial adrenaline spike.
Exactly. Second, control your social interactions. Avoid getting drawn into intense, last-minute cramming discussions or comparisons with anxious peers right before you go in. It just breeds doubt.
Protect your mental space.
Yes. Third, once you're seated, before the exam even starts, consciously use that 4-second breathing technique for a minute or two. Center yourself. Fourth, when you get the paper, take a moment to read instructions and allocate your time according to your plan. Don't just dive in.
Stick to the plan. What about tackling the questions?
Critically important. Start with the questions you feel most confident about. Answer the ones you know first. This does wonders psychologically. Getting points on the board early builds momentum, creates positive feelings, and helps crowd out that initial wave of panic. It tells your brain, hey, I can do this.
Build confidence from the start. Good tip.
And finally, control the ending. Save the last 10 minutes or so, purely for reviewing your answers, checking for silly mistakes, making sure you filled everything out correctly. Don't try to cram in answers to whole new questions in the last few minutes that often leads to errors.
That idea of using early success to build momentum seems really powerful. Okay, to wrap this all up, the sources also suggest some reflection. What are the key questions we should leave listeners thinking about?
Yeah, these questions aim to build that deeper self-awareness and maybe shift the whole relationship with exams long-term. They encourage you to ask yourself things like, what specific things, situations, people, thoughts tend to increase my anxiety the most? How do I typically cope right now? Are my coping methods healthy, like exercise or talking it out, or unhealthy, like avoiding study, excessive caffeine, or negative self-talk?
Taking stock of what works and what doesn't. Right. And also asking, how could the people who support me, parents, teachers, friends, actually help me better? What kind of support feels useful versus stressful? And maybe the biggest one for long-term perspective. How can I remind myself regularly that exams measure a snapshot of knowledge at one point in time, and they absolutely do not define my fundamental worth as a person?
That last one really hits home, bringing us back to those core pressures we talked about.
Mhm.
So, what does this all mean? I think what we've unpacked today is that exam anxiety is definitely complex, it's layered, but it's not insurmountable, it's manageable.
Absolutely. It takes work, but it's manageable.
It seems to require this dual approach, tackling the mental noise, the worry, and calming the physical panic, the emotionality.
That's the core of it, mind and body. And the solution isn't just wishful thinking. It's this combination of really solid, systematic preparation, using those practical relaxation techniques, and having or building a supportive environment that focuses on effort, not just results. That final quote really resonates now. Courage doesn't mean having no fear. It means facing fear with preparation and purpose.
Well said. Preparation gives you the tools, purpose gives you the direction.
We've gone through, nearly 25 specific strategies today, from breathing cycles to study plans to how parents can shift their language. So the challenge to you listening is to maybe move from understanding to action. Which one of these strategies could you try implementing, maybe starting tomorrow? Could it be practicing that 4-second breath every morning? Could it be consciously using effort-based praise, maybe filling out that self-assessment worksheet?
Just starting with one small step can make a difference.
Exactly. We really hope this deep dive has not only shed light on exam anxiety, but also given you both the courage and maybe a practical roadmap to start transforming that fear into focused, confident action.